As many of you might know, before I went to school to become a priest and was ordained a priest, I spent 10 years in the world of philanthropy. First among a number of wealthy families giving away money, family foundations, that happened to come into some wealth and wanted to give it away and wanted to do that well. And I ended up working with their young people and bringing them up. You're going to inherit this position one day. Here's what you want to do. And I ended up moving to a group of social justice philanthropists, working among organizers and advocates and people working in civic engagement for working for social justice. And as part of that, I was working in a rural community in the western part of Virginia, almost at the border of West Virginia, and we'd organized a town hall with a local politician in Richmond, and we worked with him, and he had a town hall and then a brief get-together afterward, just to kind of level with each other and get some business done after we'd done the public thing. And he said, look, I really want to get stuff done for my district. I really want to get stuff done for y'all. Just tell me, what is it that I can do for you? And we were like, well, we have 3 important things we'd like to talk to you about. And he said, lay it on me. And we said, well, the first thing we need is a doctor. We have a clinic, and it's staffed by a rotating group of clinicians from the large hospital complex on the other side of the county. And while they're sending people on a rotation, there are gaps. And when there are gaps, people get hurt. We need someone here full time. And he said, okay, let me see what I can do. And I thought he was going to just go on to the next thing. But he picks up his cell phone, steps out of the room, and starts yelling at some unfortunate soul on the other end. His bodyguards, his security detail, and his chief of staff, who looked really embarrassed, were just like, okay, I guess that's what he's going to do. And he yelled at some poor soul, and after about 5 minutes, he comes back in the room and he says, look, nothing's written in stone, but you've got a guy, he starts Monday. Okay? He said, but you said you had 3 things. What's the second thing? Okay, the second thing. Well, there is an abandoned mine outside of town that was improperly decommissioned, and there is danger that it's contaminating the water supply. We need a group to come study it, and we need somebody, preferably the company, to foot the bill for any remediation. He goes out his cell phone, and he says, I'll be right back. And he goes outside, and he's there for about 10 minutes, screaming at some poor soul on the other end of the line. He comes back in, and he says, look, I know a guy who knows a guy who owes me a favor. Nothing's written in stone, but you got your remediation. Okay, great. So what was the third thing? Cell service. I told that joke in the first person. Did it happen? I did work in philanthropy, but I never met a politician who faked talking with cell phone. It's a joke about who you can trust. Luke opens the gospel reading that we heard. The Emperor Augustus, Governor Quirinius, he lists the people who are in charge, in whom the people should put their trust. They might as well have claimed to have cell phones. God invites us to put our trust in something else tonight. The Holy Family knew a world of politics, of war. And we know a world that even in the best of democracies, there are lies and cruelty and evil and selfishness and dysfunction. And like the Holy Family, we wander looking for what to put our trust in when there is not always room for us at the end, and we're all making do in whatever that danger was. And the Holy Family is invited, and God invites us to put our trust in a child. To put our trust not in the powers of the world, but in a baby that would be a sign of the kingdom of God. A baby, real and fragile. That if we're willing to accept that reality and defend that fragility, we might enter with that child into the kingdom of God. What strikes me about young people and infant Jesus in particular is how real they are. when my first son was about to be born, I remember the text that it's happening. And 9 months of preparation does not prepare you for the moment the child is finally going to get there. Stuff got real very quick. And I remember the panicked look on my face, or my boss at the time remembered the panicked look on my face, and she went, "You gotta go. Go. Just go." It gets real very quick. In my own youth, I fell in love, I guess before I fell in love with Jesus, or whenever that happened. I fell in love with the big ideas, justice and freedom and peace and joy and love and truth with a capital T. I was going to set the world on fire for my ideals. I thought I was going to be like a political theory professor, and I ended up like this, so you can imagine whether or not I figured it out. But God gives us ideas and traditions and gives us a book full of rules and full of stories. And they guide us. Sure. And they enrich us and they give our lives meaning. But God looked at that love for, that enthusiasm around justice and freedom and peace and joy and love and truth. And when we turned to a book and to the rules and to the traditions and to the stories, as important as they were, God responded with a child. Because ideas, they fade and they're hard to get a grip on. You poke freedom and it can evaporate. You talk about the truth and it's hot air in your mouth. But a child, person, as it wanders up the aisle or coos in the manger, it's real. It has a reality that goes beyond anything. And the prophet Isaiah understood this. He said that not a new set of rules is going to be born for us, but a child. A child has been born for us, not a book. A son has been given to us. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. You will draw life from those stories and from those rules. But real life is among you in a child, in the future. The sign that this child is. The good news of God is not a book or a set of rules. It's a person. It's a person so that our ideas might be just as incarnate as that baby. I don't imagine justice that's vengeance against some nameless other, but justice that's mercy and fairness for everyone, especially those on the margins. I don't believe in a freedom that's just licensed to do whatever you want. In light of the Christ child, I believe in the space and the support to live life as the person you were meant to be. I don't look at peace as an end to war and violence, or at least not only as an end to war and violence. But I hear in this child healing and forgiveness and wholeness so that we can be at peace with one another and finally with ourselves without guilt or shame. The child brings us joy not as a passing happiness but the very glory of God. The child brings love, not cheap grace, but finally and forever knowing that you too are a child of God, loving and beloved. I don't believe in the philosophical, vaporous truth with a capital T. I don't believe in the conventional wisdom of a world gone mad with its own cleverness, but in the wisdom of something that no one can take from you. True love, true joy, true peace, and justice to be found in a real person born this time. But it's no accident that it's a child. I mean, Jesus could have arrived as a fully formed adult. Athena burst from Zeus's head. I mean, if we were copying the mythology of others, we would just have Jesus arrive. Hello, I am Jesus in full glory, and I'm going to transform things. But Jesus brings the future as something we have to fight for. The future is a fragile, vulnerable thing. It's It's not something that will just happen passively when God, the mighty warrior, descends. We're invited, we're required to raise this child, to protect it and the future it represents. And protect and raise, in more ways than one, the child of God and everyone. Titus explains that this Christ child trains us to renounce impiety, worldly passions, so that we can lead lives that are self-controlled, upright, and godly. Against the selfishness of the world, we will be different. In a society that abandons its children and defames the image of God in the adults, we will care for God's child and all the children of God. God trusts us tonight to trusts us enough to give us God's own self, that we might place our trust not in a past that quickly fades or a present that is too heavy for us to bear, but in a future we can all enter with this Christ. The responsibility of caring for God's Son will be too much for us. That's another holiday entirely. But for today, we know that God, even in those moments, will not abandon us. God is and will always be among us, as one of us. He will suffer with and for us because the future is worth fighting for. A child is worth raising and protecting. That's the business of hope. Not in technology or violence or war, but in a child and in children. A hope not in cheap grace, but in true justice, freedom, peace, joy, love, and truth, united as one family of God. So I'll tell you a true story. I was almost an Eagle Scout. I had everything but the merit badge. I went to my church and asked for the support to renovate a home for victims of domestic violence. Our church sponsored this home. It was home to 5 women who had escaped terrible situations and had varying needs. And my big service project to get an Eagle badge I never got was, you can tell I'm still broken up about it. It just stinks to go to a scout meeting with your sons, and there's a bunch of Eagle Scouts who claim, like, oh, we can do all this stuff. And I'm like, I can do that stuff too, I just don't have the badge, man. Yes. I stood in front of my church, and I asked for support for carpet, new paint, basically to play Martha Stewart or Extreme Homemaker for these women who needed improvements to the home they were living in, this shelter that they had. And I remember going out afterwards, and there was a line in front of the priest. And I learned that the man standing in front of him had just handed the priest a check for $5,000. And he told the priest, give that kid whatever he needs. And if it's more than this, let me know. Whatever he wants to do for those women, I'll make it happen. He didn't go out on his cell phone and call in a favor. He trusted in a kid. Now, my priest of that era, Father Monsignor Caralusa, was Italian by heritage. And there was a coterie of Italian church ladies who would, follow him everywhere and speak Italian with him, So the rest of us couldn't understand what they were saying. And so after that man left after depositing his check with the priest, the ladies began chatting. And I walked up to the priest to talk to him about when we were scheduling things and the like. And I heard one of the women speaking to him, and I know enough Spanish to pick out a few words of Italian and fake it. So he looked at me and he said, did you catch what she said? And I said, she saw the future? He said, close enough. She sees in you and in the scouts who are going to be working with you the future. When you look at the children here, when you look at this Christ child in your nativity, you're looking at the future. It's one that's real. Realer than your ideas, realer than your rules, realer even than your traditions and stories, as important as they are. God gives us a person, gives us a vulnerable child, trusts us with that child, and encourages us to fight for that child, to fight with that child, for a future of true peace, joy, love, truth, justice, and freedom, reunited, remade as the family of God. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Merry Christmas.